Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with anger, anxiety, and control. Welcome back to the Crosstalk Cafe, everyone. Today marks the start of a brand new season for us. We are looking at how to get unstuck from the vicious cycle of shame, anger, fear, and depression by finally taking action. But before we get into the Word of God, Chris, I was thinking about how so many of us spend years trying to quiet our stress, but we're still fueling our minds first thing in the morning with high-octane caffeine. That's why I'm so glad to welcome our brand partner, Savorista Coffee.
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with anxiety, shame, and OCD. Oh, absolutely, Jordan. Savorista hits right at the heart of the recovery lifestyle. Their founder, Kate Brown, created craft decaf and half-calf coffee out of her own story of realizing caffeine was just amplifying her stress. Her whole focus is built on less hustle and more intention. Our listeners can go to savorista.com and enter the promo code PCBC to get 25% off.
It really helps you pause and savor life instead of constantly running on high-alert overdrive. And speaking of creating a calm space for mind and body, another major area where we need rest is getting actual restorative sleep. That's why we're also so grateful to welcome Cozy Earth to the cafe today.
Yes, Cozy Earth completely redefines sleep comfort with their bedding and pajamas made from premium viscose from bamboo, which naturally wicks moisture to keep hot sleepers cool and dry all night long. Thousands of five-star customer reviews call these sheets buttery soft, and they back everything with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. Our listeners can head over to CozyEarth.com and use that exact same promo code PCBC to get an exclusive 21% off any product.
That is an incredible deal. And because we earn a commission when you use our code PCBC at checkout for either of these brands, you're directly supporting the show and the ministry here at the cafe. But now, Chris, let's step completely out of commercial mode. So many people get stuck behind the barriers of pride and doubt, and the enemy constantly whispers that we can just surrender to God tomorrow. Let's talk about what actually changes when we take action today.
Right, because taking action, it fundamentally alters the entire trajectory of a person's life.
Yeah, it really does.
It's basically the only force that's capable of disrupting what is otherwise this totally relentless, predictable rhythm. And, when you brought up people getting stuck just a second ago, there's this massive misconception that we kind of need to clear up right away.
Oh, absolutely. What kind of misconception?
Well, being stuck sounds, I don't know, it sounds really passive, right?
Yeah, like you're just sitting there.
Exactly, like a car parked in neutral. But in the context of our daily struggles, and really our spiritual lives in general, being stuck is an incredibly active, agonizing process.
It takes energy to be stuck.
Yes. Even after someone takes those initial beautiful steps of acknowledging their brokenness, and even after they realize that God has the infinite power to restore them, they can still find themselves firmly trapped in this relentless loop of failure.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a cycle that plays out the exact same way time and time again, and it demands a massive amount of energy just to maintain the dysfunction.
That really resonates because I think that is, honestly, it's the most frustrating part for anyone listening who has tried to change. You have that flash of clarity. You recognize the brokenness. You might even confess it out loud to yourself, like on your commute to work,
right,
or whisper it in a prayer. But simply seeing the trap doesn't automatically pull you out of it.
No, it doesn't.
You can know you are in the cycle, you can map out its edges perfectly, and still feel completely powerless as the rhythm just takes over.
It's devastating.
And that rhythm is devastatingly predictable. From everything we're discussing today, regarding this curriculum of recovery, the starting line is always identical. The cycle kicks off with unresolved shame.
Always.
But, and I want to pause and challenge this for a second, we throw the word shame around a lot.
Right? Really do.
Isn't some level of internal conviction a good thing? Like a moral compass?
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going.
Because if we just wipe out all feelings of falling short, don't we risk becoming totally apathetic?
Yeah.
How are we differentiating between, like, a healthy conscience and this toxic shame that starts the cycle?
That is such a crucial distinction to make. There is a profound difference between healthy conviction and toxic shame.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, conviction is about your actions. It basically says you did something bad and you need to make it right.
Right, so it's focused on the event.
Exactly. It draws you toward reconciliation. Shame, on the other hand, is a direct assault on your identity.
Wow.
Shame says you are bad. Not just that you made a mistake, but that you are fundamentally flawed, uniquely unlovable, and completely unacceptable.
That's a heavy burden to carry.
It really is, and it doesn't draw you toward a solution at all. It forces you into hiding. When that specific type of shame is left unresolved, when it isn't brought into the light of grace, it just festers.
It just sits there and grows.
Yeah. It doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It becomes this deeply held conviction of your own worthlessness. And human nature simply cannot tolerate the raw, agonizing exposure of that feeling for very long.
It's too painful.
Way too painful. Walking around believing you are inherently defective, you just can't sustain it.
So because that internal exposure is so painful, our instincts immediately scramble for a defense mechanism.
Yep, exactly.
We need a shield. And that is exactly where the pivot happens in this cycle. Unresolved shame leads directly and almost immediately into defensive anger.
Oh, the leap from feeling ashamed to acting angry is virtually instantaneous for most of us.
It's like whiplash.
It is, because when you feel that acute pang of inadequacy, your immediate instinct is to build a wall, to push the perceived threat away. And anger becomes that wall.
The anger isn't even about the thing you're yelling about.
Almost never. If I feel exposed, if I feel like you just noticed a flaw in me, I will get angry to project that pain outward. I'll find a reason to be furious at my circumstances, at my family, or like at the driver in front of me.
Or even at God.
Or even at God, yeah. It's a way of saying, don't look at my inadequacy. Look at this fire I'm breathing instead.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It is entirely reactionary. I want you, the person listening with us right now, to really trace the timeline of your own reactions.
That's a great exercise.
Think about a moment when you just erupted. Maybe you got completely furious at, like, a household appliance. Let's say your printer wouldn't connect to the Wi-Fi.
We've all been there.
Right. And you completely lose your temper, yelling, slamming the desk. On the surface, you're mad at a piece of plastic. But if you rewind the tape just 10 minutes, what happened?
Ooh, that's the real question.
Maybe you missed an important deadline. Maybe you felt like a failure in your job, and that quiet, desperate feeling of shame was creeping in.
Yeah, exactly.
The printer was just the excuse your pride needed to unleash defensive anger. We choose anger because in the moment it feels so much more powerful than feeling ashamed.
It really does. It gives us this false sense of agency.
Right.
It offers a very temporary illusion of control. When you're projecting anger, you feel like you are actively managing the threat, even if all you're doing is spraying your unresolved pain all over the people closest to you.
Which is tragic, honestly.
It is, but the deep tragedy of defensive anger is how incredibly fragile it is as a shield. It doesn't resolve a single ounce of the underlying shame.
Not at all.
It merely distracts you from it. And inevitably, that defense mechanism fails, the anger just burns out. You run out of adrenaline.
Or worse, the anger alienates the people around you, and it leaves you entirely isolated.
Completely alone, yeah. And when that wall of anger inevitably crumbles, what rushes into the void? Fear.
Because once the anger evaporates, you are left completely unprotected. The absolute realization of your vulnerability just sets in.
It's terrifying.
The anger was the only thing keeping the perceived judgments of the world at bay, and now it's gone. You are standing there still carrying the original heavy burden of shame.
Plus the mess you just made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you have the added collateral damage of whatever your anger just destroyed. A fractured relationship, a tense workplace, a broken printer.
Yeah.
That combination breeds a state of constant, low-grade terror. You start anticipating the next failure, the next rejection, the next moment of exposure.
In attempting to live in that sustained state of fear, it's entirely unsustainable for the human spirit. Fear demands an enormous, continuous supply of emotional energy.
It takes so much work just to stay afraid.
Right. You find yourself constantly scanning your environment, constantly bracing for impact, constantly trying to manage the perceptions of everyone around you, just to ensure they don't see the shame you're trying to hide.
It's like you're on high alert 24/7.
And over time, that sustained vigilance depletes you. It drains every ounce of vitality you possess. You are left entirely drained, just running on fumes.
Utterly spent.
Yes, and that utter depletion is what plunges the individual down into the final stage of the cycle, which is heavy, suffocating depression.
Wow. The progression of this rhythm is remarkably clear once you slow down and actually trace it out.
It really is.
It operates exactly like a meticulously arranged set of falling dominoes.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Imagine setting them up, spending hours getting them perfectly spaced. The first domino in the line is that quiet, hidden feeling of shame. You might try to ignore it, maybe pretend you didn't even set it up.
But it's there.
It's there, and the moment something bumps the table, the moment it tips over, it gains incredible physical momentum. It loudly smacks into the next domino, which is defensive anger.
Right.
And that collision forces the next one to fall, which is fear. And by the time the momentum reaches the end of the line, everything crashes down into this massive heavy weight of depression.
It's a complete wipeout.
And, the most heartbreaking part of this analogy,
Yeah.
once you are lying there in that suffocating depression, the depression itself generates a brand new wave of shame.
Oh, totally. You feel ashamed that you were depressed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you start setting the dominoes right back up again.
It is a devastating perpetual motion machine. Shame, anger, fear, depression. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Over and over.
And if this cycle is so deeply painful to endure, and if the pattern is so clearly predictable to anyone who looks at it honestly, it raises a very difficult, very human question.
Which is?
Why don't we just step out of the way?
Yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah. Right. If we can literally see the dominoes falling toward us, why do we stay standing in the exact same spot, letting them crash over us month after month, year after year?
That is the pivotal question of any recovery journey. And the reality is that we don't just stand there out of ignorance.
No.
It's not that we don't know they're falling. We are kept in place by massive, invisible internal barriers.
Yeah, it's not a lack of intelligence.
Not at all. It isn't even a lack of desire to be well. Most people genuinely want to heal.
Absolutely.
It's actually a profound paralysis caused by a very specific set of internal blockades: fear, pride, guilt, worry, and doubt.
Those 5 are brutal.
They really are. These barriers are incredibly effective at keeping a person completely immobilized. They essentially lock your feet to the floor as the dominoes fall.
And they work together in such an insidious, cooperative way. Let's look closely at how guilt and pride function, because they form a particularly toxic partnership.
Okay, yeah, guilt and pride.
They act like 2 opposing sides of the same coin, working in tandem to keep a person totally separated from grace.
How so?
Well, first, guilt corners you. Guilt whispers, "You are far too broken."
Look at what you've done.
Exactly. Look at the wreckage of your life. Look at the cycle you are stuck in. Look at the people you have hurt. You are entirely disqualified from healing because of your history. It establishes a narrative of profound, permanent disqualification.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
But here is where the trap gets really intricate.
Yeah.
The moment you start to feel the crushing despair of that guilt, pride swoops in to save you with a different but equally destructive message.
Oh, pride always has a plan.
Always. Pride says, okay, maybe you are broken, but you can repair this yourself.
You don't need anyone.
Right. You don't need to ask for help, and you certainly don't need to surrender. You just need to try harder.
Read one more self-help book.
Implement one more daily habit. Wake up earlier, eat cleaner. Just figure out the perfect routine.
It's so exhausting. I mean, it's so draining.
It is. Pride convinces you that you must fix yourself first. And only then can you present a clean, acceptable, polished version of yourself to God and to the world.
Which is a complete distortion of how healing is actually designed to work.
Completely backward.
This false narrative that you must achieve perfection before you can be accepted, it's the primary engine behind the paralysis of analysis.
Oh, the paralysis of analysis. That's huge.
It really is. People spend all their available energy trying to intellectualize their brokenness. They dissect their childhoods, they catalog their past relationships, they analyze their daily habits.
Just overthinking everything.
Yeah. They chart every emotional reaction, trying to map out the exact coordinates of their dysfunction, believing that if they just understand it perfectly, they will somehow be cured by the knowledge alone.
I want to push back a little here, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because we live in a culture that heavily praises self-awareness.
Right. We definitely do.
Doesn't therapy or self-reflection have immense value? Are we suggesting that trying to understand your past is just a waste of time? I mean, surely it is helpful to know what triggers your anger.
Oh, absolutely. Self-reflection absolutely has value as a component of growth. The danger is not in understanding yourself. The danger is when self-analysis becomes the substitute for surrender.
Ah, that's a fine line.
It is. When understanding the problem becomes the sole focus, it morphs into a trap. You can know the exact origin of a disease, but knowing where you caught it doesn't administer the cure.
Right. Diagnosing the problem isn't the same as treating it.
Exactly. When we sit around analyzing our brokenness endlessly without ever taking a step of faith, we are really just giving our pride a brand new, highly respectable job to do.
Wow.
We think we're making meaningful progress because we are doing the hard work of self-examination.
That makes perfect sense. It actually reminds me of pacing back and forth inside a locked cell.
Okay, I like this.
We think the movement is progress. We walk the perimeter of the cell. We know every single inch of the stone walls. We know exactly why the iron bars were installed.
We studied them?
Yeah. We have studied the mechanical history of the lock on the door. We are the world's foremost experts on our own imprisonment.
That is so true.
But despite all that brilliant analysis, we are still entirely locked inside the cell. We haven't turned the key. Analyzing the condition endlessly actually prevents you from taking the concrete steps required to step out of the door.
That is a stunningly accurate way to picture it. Pacing the perimeter of the cell while holding a magnifying glass.
Right. You look busy, but you're going nowhere.
And we have to acknowledge how much modern culture actively encourages this endless pacing. We live in an era that constantly instructs us to look exclusively inward for our salvation.
Oh, entirely. Everything is about looking inside.
The prevailing message is that if we just dig deep enough into our own emotional reserves, if we just spend enough time focusing inward on our own motivations and traumas, we will eventually unearth the secret to our own peace.
But that never works.
No, because this cultural messaging only reinforces the exact barrier of pride that is keeping us separated from God's immediate grace. It tells us that we are our own solution.
Which means we carry the entire burden of our own rescue.
Exactly.
Which is the ultimate crushing lie of the internal barrier. The tension this creates in a person's life is just agonizing.
It really is.
You know you were stuck. You know the cycle of shame, anger, fear, and depression is eroding your life, your joy, and your relationships. But you feel so clouded by doubt and so weighed down by the impossible demand to fix yourself that you literally cannot move.
You're frozen.
You are paralyzed by the belief that taking action requires you to have the whole process figured out in advance. You think you need a flawless blueprint before you can lay the first brick.
But that brings us to the profound beauty and the ultimate relief of the true antidote.
Yes, the turning point.
If endless self-analysis and the pride of self-repair are what keep us pacing the cell, the solution is to completely abandon the analysis and take concrete, immediate action outward.
Outward, not inward.
Right. The antidote to the cycle of failure is never going to be found in understanding yourself better. It is found in surrendering yourself completely.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It changes everything. The most vital action a person can take to shatter this paralysis is the decision to ask Jesus Christ into their heart.
Yes, establishing a personal, permanent relationship with a higher power. That is the action that stops the dominoes mid-fall.
It catches them right in the air.
And what is so incredible about this, especially for anyone who feels overwhelmed by complicated self-help systems, is how deliberately uncomplicated this action is designed to be.
Oh, it's wonderfully simple.
If you look at the roadmap provided in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, it is breathtaking in its simplicity. It simply says, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
That's it.
That is it. That is the concrete action. There are no prerequisites, no psychological exams, no required waiting periods.
The simplicity of Romans 10:9 is entirely intentional. It is a brilliant design meant to cut violently through the paralysis of worry, doubt, and overanalysis we were just talking about.
I knew we'd overcomplicate it.
He absolutely did. He knows human nature intimately. He knows that if the roadmap to salvation required a complex understanding of theology, or a perfect track record of moral behavior, or like a complete psychological mastery of our own brokenness, we would never, ever make it.
Never. We'd always fall short.
The barriers of pride and guilt would keep us locked out forever. We would always find a reason to say, I haven't done enough yet. So he completely bypassed our ability to earn it.
Which is the definition of grace.
Right. He made the requirement a simple, profound declaration of surrender. Declare he is Lord. Believe he conquered death.
I want anyone listening right now to really sit with the sheer relief of what this means.
It's such a relief.
This is a one-time permanent choice that establishes an immovable foundation in your life. Think about how tiring the rest of the world is.
Oh, it's relentless.
In the world, absolutely everything requires constant, unending maintenance. Your career demands constant performance.
Yeah.
Your physical health requires daily effort. Your bank account requires constant vigilance. Everything in life demands that you hustle continuously just to keep it intact. And if you stop hustling, it falls apart.
It all just crumbles.
But this choice, this foundational surrender to Jesus Christ, is completely different. It is a permanent establishment of a relationship. Once you make that decision, the relationship is secured by His effort, not yours.
And getting the timeline of that relationship right is critically important.
What do you mean by the timeline?
Well, it is only after securing this permanent foundation that a person can truly begin the daily, practical work of asking for and following His will. People get this sequence backward all the time.
Oh, I see. They try to do the work first.
Exactly. And it causes so much unnecessary pain. They try to follow God's will for their lives first. They try to live righteously, act morally, love unconditionally, conquer their addictions before they have actually surrendered their heart and established the relationship.
They're trying to earn the foundation instead of receiving it.
Yes, they are trying to build the roof of the house before pouring the concrete foundation. It is structurally impossible.
It'll cave in every time.
You simply cannot follow His will until you first accept His presence. The foundation of grace must come first, and everything else is built on top of that.
That's so good.
Yeah.
You cannot navigate a ship using a compass you refuse to hold.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
But this brings up a massive conflict, one that I think we really need to confront honestly.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the roadmap in Romans 10:9 is so clear, if it's intentionally uncomplicated, and if it offers a permanent foundation of relief from this agonizing cycle, what is actively stopping a person from doing it right this very second?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why do so many people hear this truth, feel the crushing weight of their own depletion, acknowledge that their way isn't working, and yet they still hesitate?
Because there is an intense unseen battle raging over your timeline. We have to recognize that this hesitation is not just a matter of human indecision.
No, it's deeper than that.
This is active spiritual opposition. God is pleading for immediate freedom. He is offering grace, restoration, and a new identity today in this very moment.
Right now.
But the enemy employs a remarkably subtle, highly effective tactic to counter this urgency. Notice how the enemy operates. He doesn't usually attack the truth of the offer directly.
What do you mean?
Well, he doesn't expend his energy trying to convince you that God isn't real, or that the cycle of shame and depression is actually a wonderful way to spend your life, or that recovery is scientifically impossible.
Right, because direct attacks like that would immediately raise our defenses.
Exactly.
If a voice whispered in your ear, God is a complete lie and you should just suffer in your depression forever, we would instantly recognize that as hostile. We would reject it. It would push us toward action.
A direct attack is way too obvious. We'd fight back. So the enemy uses a much more brilliant, insidious strategy. He simply agrees with your best intentions.
Oh, wow.
He whispers, "You know what? You are absolutely right. Surrendering to God is a wonderful idea. Taking action and breaking the cycle of anger is exactly what you need to do to save your family. It is a noble thought. It is true. You should definitely take that step tomorrow."
Oh, man.
Tomorrow.
He takes your own good intentions and weaponizes your natural inclination toward procrastination.
Tomorrow. It really might be the most destructive word in the human vocabulary when it comes to spiritual freedom. Absolutely.
By simply agreeing that surrender is a good idea for later, the enemy completely bypasses all of our defensive arguments. He placates our conscience. We actually feel a false sense of accomplishment because we have intended to do the right thing.
We pat ourselves on the back for a plan we haven't started.
Yes. We feel good about ourselves for planning to surrender, completely ignoring the fact that we haven't actually taken the step. We mistake the intention for the action.
It is a profound, devastating deception because delaying surrender by just one day guarantees a very specific, tragic outcome.
What's that?
It guarantees that the enemy gets to keep you trapped in that agonizing cycle of shame, anger, fear, and depression for one more day.
Just one more day. But those days add up.
Think of this delay tactic like a quiet thief in the night. The thief doesn't kick your front door down, shatter the glass, and announce his presence by yelling.
No, because that would wake you up.
Exactly. That would cause you to grab a baseball bat and fight back. Instead, the thief slips in silently. He gently turns the lock, steps softly into your hallway, and slowly, methodically steals your time, one delayed decision at a time.
That is terrifying.
Before you even realize what has happened, a decade has passed. You spent 10 years intending to surrender tomorrow, and you have lost a decade of peace.
That is a chilling reality to confront.
Right.
And it is exactly why we have to recognize that procrastination, in this specific context, is not just some passive, harmless personality quirk.
It's not just a time management issue.
Right. It is not just you being a little unorganized.
No.
It is an active weapon being used against your soul. The enemy is absolutely terrified of what happens the moment you actually take action.
Oh, he is petrified of it.
He knows that the very instant you declare Jesus as Lord, his absolute grip on your life is shattered permanently. So he will do whatever it takes, use whatever distraction is handy to keep you living in the illusion of tomorrow.
Yep.
But tomorrow never actually arrives. We only ever have today.
Which is why the transition from discussing the unseen warfare over our timeline into what actually happens in lived reality is so important.
Let's get into that.
We need to move from the abstract theology into what actually changes on a random Tuesday afternoon when you cross that threshold. When you finally stop listening to the delay tactics, when you ignore the whisper of tomorrow and take action today, how does it fundamentally alter your daily reality?
Let's get really practical about what that looks like.
Yeah, let's do it.
What differences do we actually notice in the gritty, unglamorous details of everyday life, since accepting Christ as our foundation? For someone listening, breaking the cycle might sound like a nice poetic concept.
Right, like a nice metaphor.
But it plays out in very tangible, measurable ways. Speaking purely from my own experience with anger and the need for control, the most profound difference I have noticed since surrendering my life is the introduction of what I call a supernatural pause.
The supernatural pause. That is a fascinating way to describe it. Walk us through the mechanics of that. How does a pause actually interrupt the momentum of the cycle?
So in the past, before I belonged to the Savior, whenever I faced intense pressure, my immediate reaction was entirely driven by pride and underlying fear.
Okay.
If a situation felt unstable, if a plan fell apart, or if someone challenged my competence at work, it would instantly trigger a massive flare-up of anger.
That immediate defensive wall.
Exactly. And that anger, as we discussed earlier, was essentially a desperate need to aggressively control everyone and everything around me just to feel secure. I would dictate outcomes, manipulate conversations, and emotionally bulldoze people.
Just running people over to feel safe.
My internal narrative running in the background was, if I am not in absolute control of this room, I am in grave danger.
That perfectly illustrates the defensive anger acting as a barrier. You are using control to shield yourself from the unresolved shame and fear of failure.
Precisely. It was a miserable way to live. But now, the difference is that the Holy Spirit provides an active interruption. Now, I want to be clear here. The pressure still happens.
Life doesn't just get easy.
Right.
Yeah.
The challenging circumstances, the failed plans, the difficult people, none of that magically disappears. But in that crucial, tiny fraction of a second between the pressure hitting me and my habitual reaction taking over, the Holy Spirit provides a moment to take a breath.
Wow.
It is a literal supernatural ability to step back from the emotional edge. Instead of reacting in immediate controlling rage, I can pause. I can recognize the fear for what it is, just fear, not reality.
That's huge.
And in that pause, I can intentionally hand the outcome over to God. I no longer have to control the room to be safe because my ultimate safety is already secured in Him. The pressure remains, but the destructive reaction is what gets transformed.
That transformation of the reaction is the very essence of getting unstuck.
It really is.
Hearing you describe the pause resonates deeply with my own timeline of grace, though it manifests a bit differently for me.
How does it look for you?
For me, the most profound difference is how the cycle of failure is intercepted before it can drag me all the way down into the depths. Previously, the pattern was absolute and unrelenting.
The dominoes always fell.
Every single time. If I made a mistake, and I am talking about even a relatively small misstep, a forgotten appointment or a minor error in judgment, it wouldn't just be processed as an isolated event.
It became something bigger.
It would immediately trigger an avalanche of shame. The internal narrative was never, I made a mistake. It was always, I am fundamentally a mistake. I am a failure.
Attacking the identity, just like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And that heavy shame would pull me straight down into days, sometimes weeks, of anxious, paralyzing depression.
The dominoes falling instantly, with no friction to slow them down.
Exactly. A single minor mistake tipped the first domino, and the rest were guaranteed to crash, taking my peace of mind entirely with them. But today, because I have accepted Jesus and I know that my identity is rooted in Him as a new creation, His grace acts as an interrupter right between the mistake and the shame.
Right in the gap.
Grace literally steps into the gap. When a flaw is exposed, or when I inevitably fail at something, grace catches the domino before it can knock over the next one.
It stops the momentum.
It breaks the momentum entirely. I can now look at a personal flaw, acknowledge it honestly without frantically defending myself, and not be utterly destroyed by it. The cycle is broken by grace before it gains that devastating momentum toward depression.
What stands out to me so clearly in both of our experiences is what didn't change.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Neither of our lives became magically free of difficult circumstances or external pressure or personal mistakes. The world still presents massive challenges every single day. The miracle we are talking about isn't the sudden absence of pressure.
No, definitely not.
The miracle is the complete transformation of our reaction to that pressure. Grace doesn't rewrite the past, and it doesn't instantly perfect our behavior so we never stumble again.
Right?
But it fundamentally rewrites how we process our own humanity. We are no longer held hostage by the cycle. We are free to be imperfect without being destroyed by it.
And learning to live outside of that cycle, learning to actually walk in that supernatural pause and lean on that interrupting grace is absolutely not something you are meant to do in isolation.
No, you can't do it alone.
If you try to implement this new way of living entirely by yourself, relying solely on your own willpower, the barriers of doubt and pride will eventually find a crack and seep right back in.
You'll just end up holding on tight, trying to force it, and eventually you'll wear out.
Exactly. This is why the necessity of community is absolutely critical. We need a supportive environment that understands these very specific internal battles, a place where people speak the same language of recovery.
Which brings us to the core of why Celebrate Recovery at Peters Creek Baptist Church, right here in South Park, Pennsylvania, exists.
Yes.
The weekly fellowship there is not just a casual social gathering or a polite meet and greet. It is a meticulously structured environment designed specifically, intentionally, to help people get unstuck and stay unstuck. It provides the framework to practice everything we've been talking about.
The structure itself is so important. Every single element of the Friday night schedule serves a distinct, purposeful role in dismantling the cycle of failure.
Walk us through what Friday night looks like.
Well, evening begins promptly at 6:30 p.m. with large group worship. This is where everyone comes together for corporate praise, direct biblical teaching on recovery principles, and the sharing of real-life recovery testimonies.
I want to highlight why that corporate element is so vital.
Please do.
Why start the night in a large group? Because celebrating the power of taking action corporately completely shatters the isolation that shame relies on.
Oh, that's so true.
Remember, shame thrives in the dark. It convinces you that you are the only one who struggles, that your mess is uniquely unfixable, and that if anyone knew the truth, you would be cast out.
The ultimate lie.
But when you are standing in a room full of people who are openly praising God and transparently sharing real testimonies of how He is transforming their brokenness, the lie of isolation just evaporates.
You see it with your own eyes.
You look around the room and realize, I am not alone in this. My struggle is not unique, and healing is actually possible.
It creates an atmosphere of shared victory and mutual hope.
It really does. What happens after the large group?
Following that, at 7:30 p.m., the environment shifts intentionally into gender-specific small groups. And this is where the mechanics of healing really get protected.
The guidelines of those groups are fantastic.
They are. These groups are governed by strict, non-negotiable guidelines to ensure it remains a safe place. There is zero crosstalk allowed. Absolute confidentiality is required, and perhaps most importantly, there is a strict rule of no unsolicited advice giving.
I have to say that no unsolicited advice rule is one of my absolute favorite things.
It changes everything.
It offers one of the most profound reliefs a person can experience in a group setting. Think about how freeing it is for you, the listener, to know that you can walk into a room, confess your deepest fears, articulate your worries, admit your failures, and not have to brace yourself for a lecture.
Right. You don't have to defend yourself.
You don't have to prepare your defenses for the person sitting next to you to immediately offer a 12-step fixing plan to manage your life. You can just be broken without being managed.
The brilliance of that specific rule is that it directly counters the pride and control issues we discussed earlier.
Explain that connection.
When we try to give unsolicited advice to someone who is hurting, we are very often operating out of our own subtle pride. We are trying to fix them, which implicitly suggests we have it all figured out, and it puts us in a position of superior control over their situation.
Wow, yes, that's exactly what control looks like in a group setting.
By outright banning unsolicited advice, the small group remains a completely level playing field. It forces everyone in the circle to just sit in the grace of listening. It reminds us to trust that the Holy Spirit is the one who does the fixing, not us.
It entirely eliminates the performance anxiety of recovery.
Totally.
You don't have to sound smart. You don't have to have a breakthrough every week. You are just allowed to be there, to be honest about where you are, and to be truly heard. It is a remarkably safe environment to dismantle those internal barriers holding you back.
And then finally, at 8:30 p.m., the evening transitions to the Crosstalk Cafe.
The best part of the night.
It really is. This is a much more relaxed, unstructured space. The formal groups are over, and the focus shifts to building healthy, everyday relationships, having authentic conversations over coffee, and connecting with sponsors.
People who have walked the path a little further ahead of you.
Exactly. People who are willing to walk alongside you in the daily grind.
It is the practical, lived application of community. We go from corporate worship to intimate vulnerability in small groups, and finally to relaxed, supportive fellowship at the cafe.
The entire arc of the evening is a comprehensive, structured antidote to the isolation and fear that constantly try to refuel the cycle of failure.
So, we have covered a lot of ground today. We have laid out the mechanics of the cycle, the shame, anger, fear, and depression. We have exposed the internal barriers of pride and guilt that keep you paralyzed in the cell.
We have.
We have celebrated the simplicity of the action required in Romans 10:9, and we have highlighted the critical importance of a community to support you once you take that action.
The only thing left to confront is your timeline.
Yes, the battle over today versus tomorrow.
If you are listening to this right now and you recognize the sound of those falling dominoes in your own life, if you feel the weight of the shame, the exhaustion of the anger, the paralyzing grip of the fear, or the heavy blanket of depression, this is your moment of decision.
It's time to choose.
We extend a deeply urgent, heartfelt invitation to you. If you are in the local South Park or Bethel Park area, join this incredible community this coming Friday night. Step into the environment where the isolation is broken.
And if you are tuning in from outside Western Pennsylvania, you do not have to stay isolated. You can easily find a safe, Bible-centered fellowship near you.
That's right.
Just visit crlocator.com, enter your zip code, and find a community that will gladly walk alongside you. You can also reach out to the leadership team here directly. Email Craig Amstone at craig.amstone@gmail.com or contact the church office at info@pcbc.church. There are people standing by, ready and eager to help you take this step.
The time for endlessly analyzing your condition is over. Stop listening to the subtle, agreeable voice of the enemy that tells you to just wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow is a manufactured trap designed to keep you exactly where you are, suffering in the same rhythm.
Don't fall for it again.
Push past the pride that stubbornly demands you fix yourself first. Push past the heavy guilt that lies to you, saying you are too far gone to be rescued.
Take action today. Declare Jesus is Lord, believe he conquered death, and let him permanently break the cycle of failure in your life.
Today is the day.
As we wrap up our discussion at the cafe today, I want you to sit with one lingering, powerful question and really let it challenge your perspective on your own hesitation.
Let's hear it.
If the enemy's most successful strategy against you right now is simply whispering, wait until tomorrow, what exact life-changing action is he absolutely terrified you are going to take today?